Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with Orlando, Florida-based veteran jazz trumpeter John DePaola. We caught up with this Pittsburg-born musician to talk about quite a bit, like his newest 2021 CD, Take Two, done with his quartet, life as a freelance trumpeter in COVID times, and his long road in jazz so far. His style of jazz improvisation radiates warmth and is complemented by his ability to create melodic solos. It's a great story. Enjoy.
Thanks for taking a minute out to Neon Jazz.
Oh, man, thanks for calling. My pleasure.
You bet. So I really have enjoyed Take Two, and my first question that I want to know about this album is it's coming out during a pandemic, and this isn't necessarily a timing issue like when you made it, but it's coming out now during a pandemic. What are your thoughts on that?
I had done the CD earlier. I never got around to really promoting it like I should, and it sold well, but it sold well off a lot of my live gigs. And then my live gigs, I just would sell them off the bandstand. I sold a lot of them. But then when the pandemic hit, all that went away, and we were all just kind of sitting around with no jobs. So I figured this would be a good time to try to get it out of Florida. And that, the pandemic has done that to a lot of us musicians around, and so we're all scraping around trying to find things to do. And one of the things I got around to doing was trying to increase my presence elsewhere, because I know it's a good CD. I just didn't, being a busy freelancer, I just didn't have time to, shop it around.
Well, and it is a wonderful CD, and I guess that's the next thing I want to know from you. What do you ultimately want the listener to get from this experience? I know what I got from it, but what are you hoping they get from it?
I was kind of hoping they'd get the idea of like who I was kind of musically, because I really haven't changed over the years. I'm 61 now, and the idea was to try to get them to listen to how I play and what my thoughts are about playing, because I'm not one of these guys that's real, what's the word I'm looking for? I'm more playful than I am totally serious about what I'm doing. I take my art seriously, but I try to do it in a playful way, and I think that's what I really tried to do, because, as a trumpet player, I haven't been able to make it, say, in a serious vein like a Miles Davis would. I've had to adapt to my surroundings, and I'm here in Orlando, and we're an entertainment capital. So whatever you do musically around here, if you want people to come back to see your shows again, you better be entertaining as well as serious about your music. So that's the idea I wanted to get across. I was, because I put Poochie on the record, and, I wanted to give people the idea that this wasn't something that was a brand new serious art form that was anyway motivated by any kind of agenda about politics or anything that's going on in the world. This was just me having fun with my music and taking it seriously at the same time.
So are you originally from that area?
No, I'm from Pittsburgh.
So talk to me about your childhood and how you got the jazz bug in you.
Interesting. Well, my dad went to a flea market way back. Do you remember flea markets?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So that was a big thing in Pittsburgh in the summertime. And so he bought me a trumpet for $20. I think I was about 10 years old. And my dad had played euphonium in the Italian Army band during World War II. He loved music because music was one of the things that saved him from having to carry a rifle during World War II. He got assigned to a band unit, and it kept him out of seeing combat. So he really, appreciated music, and he always wanted me to have that experience. So he bought me this trumpet, and he taught me the scale on the trumpet because the fingerings were the same for euphonium. And so I started from there. But, my first experiences from that point, from being a child and becoming a music major at Duquesne University, was basically classical experiences, because I was trained. I had a good teacher, and I played well, and I joined the Pittsburgh Youth Symphony Orchestra, and when I was in high school, and I was really going to be a serious classical musician. By the time I went to college, I figured that was it. I wanted to play in an orchestra, and I got in a really good school at Pittsburgh, and I was studying And there was a piano player that went to school with me at the same time. There were two guys. There was a guy named Jeff Watts, a drummer. You probably know Jeff. And there was a piano player there at Duquesne University named Dave Budway. Dave's been in New York for a long time now, but when I was a freshman, I was doing my classical stuff, and Dave Budway heard something in me. He came in my practice room, and he said, "Hey, John, I want to show you something." And he played me a Charlie Parker blues head. And he said, "Can you learn it?" I learned it real quick because I had a good ear. And he says, now play. And I said, "Dave, what do you want me to play?" He said, "Just play." And it was, I think the head was Cool Blues by Charlie Parker. And I started playing, and we went back and forth. And I started kind of imitating because he was kind of feeding me lines. And I started imitating what he was doing. And then he said, "Yeah, man, that's it. Keep doing it." And he left my practice room then, and then that's how I started. I got the bug, and away I went with that.
What was the first live show that you saw that really made you think, man, that's something I'd love to do?
Oh, probably, it was probably being in jazz band at Duquesne. Yeah, we had a really good jazz band. We had a good director, Dr. John Wilson, and he kind of got me going in that direction. Because there were a lot of great players in Pittsburgh. There was a young saxophone named Don Alico, who's still around, and then there was Dave Budway, and then there was Jeff Watts, who went on to play with Wynton Marsalis, and and Bill Carmichael, great lead trumpet player, who's down here in Orlando. And so there wasn't any lack of great musicians in Pittsburgh at that time, and I think this would have been 1976, 1977. So just being around those guys was really great, and I realized how far behind I was in learning how to play jazz. I tried to play catch-up as much as I could.
What do you like the best about waking up every day knowing that you're a professional musician? What is it that's the most appealing to you?
I've been able to actually make a living and not work my whole life because I never considered it work. It was just so much fun to play a horn for people and get smiles. Not a lot of people really have the pleasure of doing that every day for money. So I've enjoyed every minute of it between the classical and the jazz and all the stuff. I don't think you'll find a more challenging, more rewarding career than playing a musical instrument because it's competitive, it's challenging, but it's pretty fun and rewarding.
Why do you love jazz?
Why do I love jazz? I love jazz because that's a good question. And I can speak from experience because I played both classical and jazz. When you play classical music, the trick is to interpret it and play it. Of course, play it to perfection, but within that perfection, make sure your interpretation is the right one. And even if you go a step further, your interpretation could be the right one, but maybe it could be an interpretation that's uniquely you, but within that framework. So there's a lot of work to be done there. There's not a lot of freedom as far as what notes you play. So your interpretation has to be within that framework of that composition. But with jazz, once you play the head and we're open for solos, you're off and running. Whatever the composition is, it's in your brain and it's got to come out of your horn. And the challenge there is to make sense of your musical lines, give it direction, and sort of compose on the spot, if you will.
The one thing about this last year, as hard as it's been, a year of growth, I think, for a lot of artists, especially the world of jazz. How do you see the world of jazz emerging stronger once everybody starts coming back to live music?
What I've seen, of course, we've seen everybody, they're writing more, and we're seeing it a lot on the internet now, So the internet has brought everyone closer together jazz-wise, YouTube, and I really didn't know what the acapella app was until I started watching a lot of YouTube because I had a lot of free time. But I think I'm hoping doesn't happen is that we see this reduction in live music kind of sustain itself. I want to see live music to get back to the levels it was before, and even I think I want to see it to go further because everyone's so tired of being cooped up, and we're really tired of not being able to go out and mingle and catch groups in a club. And, we're really tired of not being in crowds, too, because even though clubs are opening up, I see people 6 feet apart, there's still a little bit of a barrier there as far as really having a good time. And so I'm looking forward to having COVID disappear and having everyone get back to actually forgetting about it and getting lost in the music.
If you have a dream tonight and you run into your younger self around the time you were becoming a professional and you could give your younger self one piece of advice, what would it be?
Oh, I would say, man, don't get down. Don't get down on yourself. Just keep practicing. You're going in the right direction. Don't get depressed about all these things you have to overcome. Just stop whining about it and do it.
What about this? What if a jazz DeLorean pulls up in front of your house after we get off the phone and you can punch in the digits, go anywhere, see anybody in the annals of jazz history? Who are you going to see and who would you want to talk to when they get off the bandstand?
It's hard to choose one. It really is hard to choose one because so many of my favorites are trumpet players. I think Miles Davis. I think out of all the trumpet players, I'm just going to talk from a trumpet player standpoint because if we had to encompass all of music, I would say maybe Duke Ellington would be the most articulate and knowledgeable person you could ever have a conversation with. I would love to have a conversation with Wynton Marsalis if he would be willing to have a conversation with me. There'd be a lot of questions I'd ask him. But I think if we're talking trumpet players in history, I think Miles Davis would probably be the most interesting person. But he probably wouldn't be the most talkative person. He's a doer, and he's changed music, 3 or 4 times over the years. But it would be interesting to just hear him comment about all that stuff over the years,
So everyone has a perception of you, your family, your friends, fans, students, but you're living your life. Who do you think you are?
I'm just a guy with a trumpet trying to make a living. It's always come down to that because to be just a guy with a trumpet making a living is not, it's not as easy as you think. And my fellow trumpeters would agree with me if they heard this interview.
Hey, John, thank you for taking some time out for Neon Jazz today. I really appreciate it. Good luck with the album and the return to the stage.
All right. Thanks, Joe, and I appreciate what you do, and much more success to you.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest players in Pittsburgh, Orlando, Kansas City, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. And thanks to John for his time, music, and story. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino on the iTunes Store. Visit neonjazz at youtube.com, and for everything Neon Jazz all the time, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.